Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's Planning Subcommittee of the Heavy Woollen area. Please, can I ask if you would switch your mobile phones off, please? I'll put them on silent and not have them out. We don't need to be on our mobile phones while we're conducting this afternoon's meeting. Any speakers that we have will have 3 minutes to speak, and I will give you a 30-second end of warning. Councillors have 5 minutes to speak. Okay, so membership of the subcommittee is item number 1 on the agenda. I have apologies from Mel, Stephen and Joshua Sheard. Any more apologies? Can we just go around the room, members, and just introduce ourselves? I'm Councillor Gwen Lowe.
Councillor Jackie Ramsey.
Councillor Musrat Pervez.
Councillor Nosheen Dad.
Councillor Anwar.
Councillor Fazila Lunat.
Councillor Adam Gregg.
Councillor Alex Lukic.
Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you. Members who've just come in, can I just remind you to switch your mobile phones off or on silent, and they shouldn't be out during the meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Item number 2 on the agenda is minutes of the previous meeting. Can we approve those minutes? All those in favour? Thank you, those are carried. Item number 3, declaration of interests and lobbying. Can we just go around the room again, please, and ask if anybody's got any interests and lobbying?
Bradford Road, Little Town. Nothing, no advice given.
Lobbied on 2022-92094, various, no advice given.
None.
Lobbied on 2022-92094, item 10, page 11. Supporter, no advice given.
Was lobbied on item 9/2022-92094, no advice given.
Lobbied on item 11. Thank you. No advice given.
I haven't been lobbied on any items, Chair. Thank you.
No lobbying, Chair.
Right, thank you, Chair. Item 12. A long time ago, I was given a copy of the plans by a member of the Methodist Church in Cleckheaton. I pointed out that I was a member of the committee and couldn't express an opinion at the time. So, but it is quite a long time ago now. But that's the only interest I've had.
No lobbying, Chair.
Thank you, members, and no lobbying from me either. Thank you. Item number 4, admission of the public. Okay, I'm back. Item number 5, any deputations or petitions?
No, Chair.
None received. Thank you. Item number 6 is public question time. No questions? Thank you. And then items 7, 8 and 9 were this morning site visits. Thank you to our members who were able to join us on the site visits this morning. So we can now move on to the actual planning applications. So item number 10 is our first planning application this afternoon. So item number 10 is planning application 2022/9204, demolition of public house and erection of education centre and prayer room, former Nelson Inn, 145 Slaithwaite Road, Thornhill Lees, Dewsbury. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sarah Longbottom. I'm Deputy Team Leader in Development Management. Members visited the site this morning and the application relates to the former Nelson Inn public house on Slathwaite Road, Thornhill-Lees. The image just up there now is the building as it originally was. Members may recall that a previous application was brought to committee in February 2021, where at that time the principle of the change of use of the existing building to an education centre and prayer room was considered to be acceptable and subsequently approved. The current application seeks permission for the demolition of the existing building and the erection of a new building to be used as an education centre and prayer room. And as members will have seen on site earlier today, demolition is currently underway. The design of the new building is similar to that of the original building, would be constructed of stone with slate roof, would have a similar footprint, however it would be 1/2 metre taller than the original building, and the images just up on the screen now just indicate that the original and the proposed front elevations. Officers consider this to be acceptable from a visual amenity perspective, and in addition, there is considered to be no adverse impact on residential amenity as a result of the siting the orientation of the new building. In respect of highway safety, there is a small car park to the side of the building, providing 6 spaces, and the agent has indicated that there would be a maximum of 15 students or 10 worshippers on the site at any one time. A condition is recommended to this effect should the application be approved, in addition to a further condition requiring the submission of a management plan. The details of these are set out in paragraph 12 of the committee report. And these and other conditions are consistent with those which were agreed by members at the time of the approval of the previous application. Just as a way of an update, there is an additional condition recommended regarding if any unexpected contamination is to be encountered during the course of development. So that would be recommended also by officers. And just images here of the other elevations to the building that show the difference to what it was previously like and what is proposed as part of the current application. And the floor plans as well also, predominantly as was previously approved in terms of the use of that floor space. So to summarise, officers consider the proposal to be in accordance with relevant policies, having no detrimental impact on visual, residential amenity or highway safety, and as such approval is recommended as set out within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have one speaker on my list, but he's not arrived. Are we okay to move on to members' comments? Yeah. Okay, members, any comments, any questions? Councillor Dadd, please.
Thank you, Chair. Based on the report, I'd like to move officers' recommendations for approval, obviously with the conditions in place.
Councillor Pervez.
Yeah, I'd like to second that.
Councillor Hall.
I remember this from a few years ago, and I remember the pub well, Lord Nelson. I'm in favour of it. It's unfortunately pubs we're waving bye-bye to them, and I see them as being very important to communities. Now, the fact that this place, this spot can be used as a community space, I think it's worth, well, it is, no two ways about it, it's worth passing this application, so I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any more questions or comments from members? Can I just ask a question, please? When it says on page 17, 10.20 and 10.19 about condition for a maximum of 15 students at any one time or 10 worshippers on site at any one time, can I just ask how that will be marshalled, please?
Yes, Chair. This is consistent with other conditions that we've imposed on similar approvals for this kind of use. As set out within paragraph 12, there is the requirement for that submission of that management plan, which requires details of the attendance, the timings of the classes as such. So the applicant is required to accord with those conditions, and if they didn't, that would be a breach of that condition. The local planning authority can request the details of that management plan, you know, how that's operating at any time. So that would need to be made available for inspection, as it were.
Thank you. No more questions or comments? I have a proposer, a seconder and a thirder to move approval. Can we go around the room, please, to vote?
To vote on the officer's recommendation. Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Ramsey.
For.
Councillor Pervez.
For.
Councillor Dadd.
For.
Councillor Anwar.
For.
Councillor Lunat.
For.
Councillor Gregg.
For.
Councillor Lukic.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Lawson.
For.
Is that unanimous? Thank you.
Don't I get a vote?
Chair. Councillor Lowe.
I know what you were. For. That is approved. Thank you, members. Thank you. Agenda item number 11 is planning application 2022/90804. This is erection of dwelling, formation of access and other associated operations, Bell Cabin, Long Lane, Earls Eaton in Dewsbury. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Callum Harrison, Development Management Officer for application 2022-90804 for the erection of dwelling, formation of access and other associated operations at Bell Cabin, Long Lane, Earls Eaton. The application relates to a site in Earls Eaton, a couple of miles to the southeast of Dewsbury Town Centre. The application site forms an area of land which is set down significantly from Long Lane. The site has been significantly cleared from trees and shrubbery, with some excavation and removal of materials to form an area of level hard standing with a high stone wall and steep access up to the highway. The site is bound by Long Lane to the east and a dense area of scrubs as trees to the west and south. A large area of playing fields occupies the area to the northwest. The site is approximately 7 metres below the adjacent highway. The images on screen show the evolution of the site over the last decade. It should be noted that the engineering operations and siting of the caravan that can be seen on screen are unauthorised works. Officers note that the applicant does state that the site has previously had a building set upon it. However, the use of this historic building has not been specified. Whilst maps dating back to the early 20th century do show a building on the site, the image from 2012 on the left-hand side of the screen show that any previous building had been blended into the landscape. To quote the MPPF, it defines previously developed or brownfield land as land which is or was occupied by a permanent structure, including the curtilage of the development land and any associated fixed surface infrastructure. This excludes land that was previously developed, but where the remains or permanent structure or fixed surface structure have blended into the landscape. Whilst the historic use of the building has not been specified, officers have still considered what it may have likely been used for. Given the presence of a mine shaft and many trees on site, the building could have been used for mineral extraction, agriculture and forestry. Buildings for these uses are also exceptions as set out in the MPPF definition. Site. a consistent stance that the local authority has given and maintained on all previous applications on the site, including a previous application refused by this committee. The plan on screen now shows that the site is set on the edge of the allocated green belt. The site plan is on screen now, along with photos of the retrospective access and engineering operations for which permission is sought. Whilst engineering operations alone are not wholly inappropriate in the Greenbelt, this is on the proviso that they preserve its openness and do not conflict with the purposes of the land included within it. The vehicular access is considered by officers to be an incongruous and urban development harmful to the Greenbelt by factor of its sheer scale. As such, the access is considered to have a significant impact and cause substantial harm to ecology. The proposals would result in a loss of an area of the Kirklees Wildlife Habitat Network within the Strategic Green Infrastructure Network due to the erection of a dwelling on the site. By virtue of siting a residential dwelling within the site, the function and connectivity of the green infrastructure networks and assets are not retained. Be seen on screen now. Officers accept that the design of the dwelling is modest. However, as the development is not acceptable in principle, officers cannot conclude that a dwelling of any appearance is acceptable in this location. Notwithstanding this, in pure isolation, the design is inoffensive and does not represent a standalone reason for refusal. It is considered that the development proposals do not accord with the development plan, and the adverse impacts of granting permission would significantly demonstrate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Our first speaker, I've got Councillor Cathy Scott, please. The microphone at the end, yeah, the end, please. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Scott. You've got 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Members, good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and it was crucial that you went to this site visit. I used to sit on the committee, fully aware of the site. However, things have changed. So I'm here today to support the Bell Cabin site in Earlsheaton. You've already read the comments of Councillor Firth in your report. I've grown up in Earlsheaton. I'm from Earlsheaton and very familiar with this site. There is more than enough evidence to support this application, as it is a brownfield site within the Greenbelt. There is clear evidence of an historical building. We grew up knowing it as the Bell Cabin. An industry was on this site. The Bell Cabin was a cottage. If you need photographic evidence, we also have that. And there is also still drainage there that remains there. This also leads me to talking about the coal mine that was on this site. The Coal Mining Authority have been submitted reports and were satisfied with the proposed remediation work report that was submitted, and this would strengthen the area of where it had the old sealed and capped one has collapsed. So what the applicant is proposing to do would support restoration in that area. Regarding the highways, The reports have been submitted, and the applicant has reinforced the retaining wall on the highways, which council has used for many years as a runoff.
Coal Authority and KC Highways, the statutory consultation responses, they're saying that they didn't have insufficient information, so they were objecting. Is that insufficient information from Kirklees or insufficient information from the applicant on that? Just a quick question. Thank you. Through you.
Do you want to come in and answer that, please? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So, with regard to the Coal Authority comments, a coal mining risk assessment was submitted. Due to the quite extensive coal mining history on there, they wanted additional information. We haven't put that forward as a recommendation for refusal. That could be secured via condition. That's mainly relating to the safety of the highway rather than the dwelling itself. So that's, yeah, in terms of highways, that was again insufficient information submitted on their opinion to determine or make a full assessment on the application. We didn't go back and ask for further information for full clarity given the issues we had with the principle of Greenbelt. Ultimately, we don't want to make the applicant do unnecessary things if the issue is with the principle. But if members were supportive of the principle, then we can look at the highways information, look to condition that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg, do you want to add anything?
I don't have any further questions, maybe observations, but I appreciate others might want to speak, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lawson, please.
I was going to ask a similar question about the highways. You mentioned that there has been a report in. Could we have some clarity on that through you, Chair?
Yeah, that's a respond. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. There was a topographical study survey submitted as part which did show some sight lines. They were substandard, and that was it in terms of transport information that we've received. Thank you, Chair.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I?
You can, Councillor Lawson, fine.
I do have issues with principle here. It does seem to rest to me, anyway, just in my opinion, that this there are three reasons here that either any of these three reasons here would be fatal to the application. Together, I would have to accept officer's recommendation to refuse, and I'll move that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. So you're moving refusal on this one. Okay. I've got Councillor Pinnock, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say that I'm inclined to go along with the officers. I won't deal with seconding that yet, but I'd like to approach it from this angle, that in section 4, the relevant planning history, there are two applications there, one in 2016, which was decided by committee, and one in 2020, which I assume was officers, both of which the application was refused. Really, for the benefit of the application we're deciding today, I'd like to know what's different, please.
Yeah, we'd like to come in and answer that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the questions there. So in terms of the 2016, the application there, which was refused by members, so that was refused on 2 grounds. So the first ground for refusal was in relation to the principle of development. So that was to do, or specifically stated, the application site is located within the designated green belt, whereby, as set out in the NPPF, the construction of new buildings, subject to certain exceptions, is regarded as inappropriate development. The development would harm the openness of the green belt by introducing additional built form that would diminish the open space between existing buildings and thus harm the character of the street scene in the green belt location. And no very special circumstances have been demonstrated to outweigh this harm. To approve the application would be contrary to the aims of Chapter 9 of the NPPF. The second reason for refusal related to the highway safety concerns, and that was due to the proposed driveway gradients. In addition to the acute angle at which the access meets the highway, the access serving the site is not acceptable and would result in substandard sightlines to the detriment of means of access and highway safety, contrary to policy T10 of the Kirklees Unity Development Plan. So, as you will have noticed there, that was based on previous version of the NPPF, and it was also based on the previous development plan. But those same concerns and those similar types of policies now fall within the updated NPPF and as part of the local plan. So, as you can see there, the concerns do still remain regarding principle and regarding highway safety. Plus, there's the concern regarding the like the ecological impacts, which is a policy now within the local plan. So I don't know if that's sort of explained a little bit more in terms of sort of the background and the planning history. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pinnock, do you want to carry
thank you.
on?
Thank you very much, Julie, for that. So I think what officers are saying to us is that there isn't anything different between the application that was refused in 2016 by ourselves as a committee and the one we've got today. The other one, which was an application to site a caravan, it's slightly different, but that I note was refused as well. What it is very hard to get away from is the fact that this planning history emphasises the points that are made in the committee report we have today, that the development that is proposed is not acceptable in that location. That's fairly straightforwardly obvious from the report. Now, the big difficulty, well, I said big difficulty, is it a big difficulty? The fact that there may have been buildings there before. The problem we always have with that sort of argument is that if there's been a gap between there being buildings and ones now proposed, you have to decide what level of continuity there is. And it seems to me that the guidance is quite clear. If there's no level of continuity, then the use has ceased. And you can't use the pre-existing use as a reason for permitting use again. I'm not even clear whether there was domestic use there before. There might have been buildings there before, but whether they were houses, I don't know. It's not clear. I regrettably, from you know, and bearing in mind what Councillor Scott and Councillor Firth have said, that I can't get away from the planning history on this site, which does seem to be against what the applicant is asking to do. The only way of testing that, obviously, is to appeal, you know, if if the officer's recommendation is followed by us today, then the only way of testing that is to appeal. So given all the evidence that we've got in front of us, I would like to second the proposal that the officer's recommendation be accepted for the reasons that we've been given. I'm sorry in many ways to have to do that, but I can't get away from the weight of evidence that we've got from the previous planning history here.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. I've got Councillor Ramsey, please.
I accept some of what you're saying around, the planning history. What I'm concerned about is that we have, as a council, been accepting council tax from presumably since 2018. Is that correct? On a property, albeit a static caravan, that's there, and I'm not sure if we've actually got. If we're on one point accepting council tax and putting a waste management strategy in, if then in 2018 we should have been doing that if actually there was no authorisation whatsoever for anybody to be there. It just feels as though we've sent a very mixed message for 4 years to be facilitating that home. I'm just anxious about that.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. I was going to ask that question as well. So, do you want to come in? Can you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. What I would need to set out is that a planning application needs to be assessed on its planning merits. Council tax, waste management, they aren't part of the actual assessment for the planning application. They are separate to that. What you need to, I suppose, consider in terms of development in the green belt is whether they're in any very special circumstances to allow development in the green belt. What I would say is that because someone's been paying council tax since 2018, I wouldn't suggest that that is a very special circumstance. But like I say, it's over to members to consider if you do feel there are any. I think what I would point out as well is what's happened on site is unauthorised. It's an authorised development which is actually taken place on site. So once again, it's considering that in the round as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm still struggling with that. Sorry. Councillor Ramsey, do you want to come back in?
Only to say that I accept what you're saying about it's unauthorised, but actually another part of the council has, in effect, said we're all right, we can accept council tax from you through this unauthorised development. So that's what's confusing me. It feels as though we've said it's authorised by one part of the council and saying unauthorised by another. And I accept what you're saying about planning, but it is a confused message.
Thank you. I agree there. Councillor Lilkick, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of considerations here. There's been evidence, I suppose, of historic use at the site, which is considered in detail in the report as to why at one time this site might have come under the definition of previously developed land, but due to being reclaimed by nature, as it were, it seems quite clear from the report, seems to out quite clearly that's no longer the case. Before I continue, just the one question I was going to ask was about, so as far as the site is currently concerned, is there no existing approved use of the site, as it were, that we're aware of based on the evidence?
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that, please? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Yes, all the works on site there are unauthorised. There also has been an enforcement notice served in 2019 to remove virtually everything you saw on site today. That ultimately hasn't been complied with, but neither was that appeal. So there is an enforcement notice ultimately that sits to remove it all as well in terms of the unauthorised works to this date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Can
Councillor
I
Luke, you want to
continue?
come back? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So there's been various actions, been various refused applications previously. The council tax issue seems to me, well, preferably, we wouldn't have been, I think, we preferably wouldn't have been accepting council tax from a site that didn't have authorisation for approval for residential use. But I do think that somewhat comes outside the planning system, the set out processes for approving residential uses in planning, planning permissions, lawful development certificates and so on. And there's certainly none of that in this case. So I don't see that as much of a material consideration in planning terms. And I'm inclined to agree with the officer recommendation in relation to this site, fully considering the history going back all the way up to its kind of reclamation by nature, and then since then unauthorised works and planning refusals.
Do you want to come back in about the council tax again? I think we just get a bit confused here. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I think just something which Councillor Lucic just sort of touched on then, I think just referring back to the site history. So if you look at with the enforcement case, that goes back to 2018. So if it's that council tax is being paid on the unauthorised caravan since round that time, if it was before that, like I said, it is unauthorised, and there has been the ongoing enforcement case during that time as well. And then applications been submitted since sort of 2020 on there, more recently. So it's, like I say, the complaint has been ongoing on the site for some time. Just to confirm that in terms of the site history.
Thank you. Councillor Luke, anything else? No. Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Pervez, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's some mixed messages here, like Greenbelt and Brownfield, because there's two local councillors who know the area really well, and they're saying about Brownfield. So I think we should defer this and then see if the council and the applicant work together and then make a decision.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hall, please.
It's down all over the place. I remember this going back to 2016, and I'm pretty sure at that meeting, even though it was refused, I'm pretty sure that there were some conditions laid down. I do know that the site itself, there were more walls there than what we saw today. Now, what that building was, whether it was some kind of small mill, whether it was some kind of house that were built to house somebody who worked in mining industry or not, I can't remember, but I do know that there were more wall in there than that. As has been said, we did notice 3 wheelie bins that are down there, so presumably we were saying, well, are they paying council tax? To me, it's all right saying, well, yeah, we're taking council tax off. They've come in with an application, but there's this going on, there's that going on. It's a bit like, to me, turning down to a drug addict authorities saying, tell you what, you're flogging drugs, but if you give us some tax, give us some income tax off your earnings, we'll pat you up back and say it's all right, forget about it. That's what it sounds a bit like to me. There's water laid on, there's other bits and bobs. Obviously, they've done a fair bit of work. Let's face it, it's not a price piece of land. I know that sight lines were mentioned at the last application, sort of 6 years ago now, because it is acute at the top. But then again, we were in, done that many planning meetings over the last few weeks, Slavweight or Slowit. We were over there other week. When you come out of Slowit up onto Manchester Road, you have to have a head and a neck like an owl to see if there's any traffic coming from behind you. So, those are acute, to say the least, out that way. Myself, I understand what some members are saying about supporting officers, and it's exceptionally rare I go against officers' recommendations. But I would like this deferred because I'd like some more delving doing into what this building actually used to be that were there. Was it a dwelling? Was it an on-site office with upstairs accommodation? We don't know. And before I say yes or no to refusing something like this, I'd like to know exactly what that history of this place is, because let's face it, if it had, I suppose it has got good views from when you stood 7 metres higher up when you stood on Long Lane itself. But from down there at that level, I don't think you're certainly not building there for views. If Councillor Parvez has moved deferral, I'd certainly back deferral for, I really do want more information about historically what were there before I can say yes or no. And that's good enough.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. So can I just remind members that I have got a proposer and a seconder to agree officer recommendation of refusal, but I've now got a proposer and a seconder to move deferral. Yes, it did. So do we go to the first one? Right, okay. Okay. So the first vote will be to whether you decide on agreeing with officer recommendation for refusal.
Okay, so to vote on the officer recommendation to refuse the application, Councillor Hall, Councillor Ramsey,
Against.
Councillor Pervez,
Against.
Councillor Dadd,
Against.
Councillor Anwar, Councillor Lunat, Councillor Gregg,
Against.
Councillor Lukic,
For.
Councillor Pinnock,
For.
Councillor Lawson,
For.
Councillor Lowe.
Against.
Okay, so that vote falls.
Okay, so can we now? Yeah.
On the deferral.
No, just clarify about deferral.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So I think a couple of the points that, in terms of the deferral vote, I think the main one which Councillor Hall raised, it was about sort of what the existing building was used for, the existing site use on there. I think you wanted officers to sort of discuss further with the sort of the applicant and representatives members in terms of establishing what that previous use was. So I think that was one of the key things. I would just draw you back to paragraph 10.4 in the report on page 27 regarding sort of the previous use, and if it's reverted back to sort of being no longer permanent, reverted to the like into the landscape. But like I say, we've taken that as one of the reasons. Would you like officers to look further into the sight lines and the highways aspect? Oh.
Case that would argue, well, it is a building, there was a building there, there's some remains there, we'll bring it back to what it used to be like.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can look into that. Am I right just to bring?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I've just been Ryan in now in terms of the highway reason for deferral as well.
Through you, Chair, Ryan Kinder, Highway Development Management. Just to clarify that we've previously asked for the following information. The visibility sight lines of 2.4 by 42 metres are needed. The applicant has demonstrated 2.4 by 25 metres, and the sight lines need to be achievable within the applicant's own red line boundary or over highway land, which they failed to do so. And then, in addition, there's an issue with the details of the design, which include the structural calculations and materials to be used to retain the site access for the existing retaining wall onto Long Lane. Again, there's no technical approval and principal information being submitted that we've requested, so they've failed to submit that so far. Just to make you aware of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got members wanting to ask questions again. Is that okay? Yeah, you fine. Yeah, do you want to come in?
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to come in terms of that third reason for, that second reason for refusal as well. So that was regarding sort of sufficient mitigation measures, etc., and scoping hadn't been submitted as part of the application. Do you want us also to investigate that further as part of the deferral, and then if members then, if you decide that you do feel, for example, there are very special circumstances, you'd have that information in front of you at that stage. Do you want us to look into doing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the before the vote on the deferral, if it does get deferred, would there be a possibility for the highways assessment to assess vehicles travelling, sort of having to turn back on themselves to access the property? Because that was a note. I noticed that the access to swing round from, you'd be struggling to do that. You could probably do it. It's not great, the access, but that is one of the problems I'd seen with the highways access to the site. So in terms of discussing that with proposed plans, could that be put into the suggestions so that next time, if it does come to the committee, because if it was exactly the same as what's being presented, it's not great, and it would ultimately be probably, from my point of view, something that I would be minded not to be too keen on, given the current access. So if there's going to be some changes to that, so you can somehow get into the property, that's probably been explained very badly by myself, but hopefully you understand where I'm coming from on that. Thank you.
Let's come back in on that, please. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Again, we've asked for swept paths of vehicles in and out of the site access, and that information has not been forthcoming. So that information is still requested.
Thank you. Councillor Pinnock, did you want to come back in?
Thank you. Yes, Julia has kind of dealt with that issue, but I want to emphasise the fact that we need to investigate whether the second reason for refusal can be overcome or mitigated in some way before we can give permission.
Thank you. Councillor Lokick.
Thank you, Chair. So I know Long Lane's a dead end, so the access from the other side might not be as much of an issue. Might be worth pointing that out. My question is mainly about the first reason for refusal. So the building that was historically on the site, I just want to check, even if that building was in a residential use, would it still be considered in national and local planning policy that is still not, that use still does not apply because the land has because the site blended into the landscape since that time? So I just want to confirm if that historic residential use would actually overcome the first reason for refusal.
Would you like to come back in? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair.
Thank you.
With regard to that point, as notwithstanding whatever the use was, an exception still remains for previously developed land, which is land that was previously developed where remains of the permanent structure, whatever that use may be, or fixed surface structure have blended into the landscape. That still wouldn't be considered previously developed land. So I think, in answer to your question, the use doesn't really make a difference in terms of whether it's previously developed or not.
Thank you. So do you want to come back in, or can we move now to the vote for the deferral? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's move to the vote for deferral now, please, members.
To vote to defer, Councillor Hall, Councillor Ramsey, Councillor Bavase,
4.
Councillor Dodd,
4.
Councillor Anwar, Councillor Luna,
4.
Councillor Gregg,
4.
Councillor Lukic,
Against?
Councillor Pinnock,
Against.
Councillor Lawson,
Against.
and Councillor Lower.
4.
Okay, so that is deferred.
Thank you, members. Would members just like a 2-3 minute comfort break, please? Thank you. Okay, members, we'll carry on. Agenda item number 12 is planning application 2022/91817. This is erection of 4-storey mixed-use building incorporating church, community facilities and 22 one-bedroom affordable older people's apartments, roof garden and associated car parking at St Andrew's Methodist Church Hall, Bradford Road, Littletown, Liversedge. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I'm Richard Riggs. I'm a Senior Planning Officer in the Majors team and Case Officer for this application. So this application has been brought before committee due to the Standing Highways objection and the balanced nature of the officer recommendation in light of that. So this proposal is for erection of a 4-storey mixed-use building. This would include the existing Methodist church, community facilities, a new cafe area and affordable dwellings on the 1st to 3rd floors. A roof terrace and conservatory would also be located on the roof, as there's little scope on site for public open space, which we'll get onto later. The proposed housing will comprise of 20 to 100% affordable dwellings for older people who have some connection to the Methodist Church. This would have to be secured through a Section 106 agreement. In terms of housing mix, you'll note in the report that the application forms a conflict with policy LP 11 in its strictest sense, but advice received from strategic housing consultees have stated that this proposed housing mix would be in line with the housing needs assessment of the area. And in light of this, the conflict with the policy is tempered by the demonstrable need. The proposed building would replace the one that's already on site, as members have seen this morning. It's acknowledged that it would be quite a bit bigger than what's on site already, but officers consider that the site is capable of taking some extra height due to its location on Bradford Road and with the surrounding built form, particularly to the south of the site, with the industrial units there. It's also acknowledged in the officer report that all potential impacts on neighbouring occupiers' residential amenity can't be entirely ruled out. However, it's also considered that any potential impacts are considered not to be significant due to the separation distances from the existing dwellings around the site and the inbuilt design and mitigation features of the building, particularly in relation to the western and southern elevations, where windows and balconies have been turned or screened slightly to prevent overlooking. The building would also sit more centrally within the site than is currently there, which would also improve separation distances from the extant building. Again, it's noted that 5 of the apartments would fall slightly under the nationally described space standards, but only marginally. I think the smallest one would be in the region of 48 square metres, which is just below the recommended standards. Although these apartments that would be slightly smaller would have access to balcony spaces, which, whilst not in themselves included within the calculations, would offer a bit of outdoor amenity space to those flats. Consultees have confirmed that potential impacts resulting from noise, odour and external lighting can all be satisfactorily dealt with by proposed conditions. And to ensure that the refuse and waste collection is adequately accommodated on site, the recommendation suggests provisions for the incorporation of a management company under a 106 for weekly collections rather than the council's bi-weekly collections. The site is considered to be in a sustainable location with a bus stop outside and good transport links, and is within the defined Littletown local centre and close to shops and local goods and services. Members will have noted on the site visit this morning that car parking is a key consideration within this application, as on-street car parking on Carr Street was full this morning, and we acknowledge that on-site car parking proposed is not at the levels that we would expect for a development of this size and mixed-use type. In that regard, KC Highways have objected to the proposal on those grounds. The applicant, has justified the proposed car parking based on the age restriction of the tenancy, the future occupiers proposed volunteering within the community setting and church, which would negate the need for paid staff, and its sustainable location. The site lies partially within flood zones 1, 2 and 3A. In light of this, officers have carried out a sequential test under the guidance in the NPPF. This concludes that the building has been is a replacement for what's already on site and has been designed sequentially so that the more vulnerable users in the dwellings are not located on the ground floor and would be very unlikely to be flooded in a flood risk event. That the sequential test is considered to be satisfied. Statutory consultees have also confirmed that there is no objections in terms of flood risk, subject to the proposed conditions, some of which are pre-commencement. In terms of drainage, the applicants haven't identified exactly how they would drain the site, but we would expect that it would be through the drainage that is already on site for the existing building. And the local lead local flood authority and Yorkshire Water have confirmed that they're quite happy for this to be dealt with via pre-commencement conditions. The proposal is considered to achieve or be able to achieve biodiversity net gain on site, resulting from the proposed new tree planting and soft landscaping features over what's already there. As members will have seen this morning, it is very heavily concreted and tarmacked at the moment. And again, KC Ecology have recommended conditions for integral bat boxes as the site lies within a bat alert area. As previously touched on, it's acknowledged that there is a lack of new public open space on the site, which development of this size would be required to provide. But the applicant is happy and has confirmed that they would make off-site financial contributions through a 106, section 106, totaling around £31,500 to be used in and around the site. As previously mentioned, the officer recommendation is a balanced one, noting the policy conflicts and standing consultancy objection, and the public benefits of the scheme, which are outlined in section 11 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have you got Mr. Bit?
No, I apologise. I've just realised I didn't show any of the slides. So that's layout is existing. This, when it comes up, is the proposed layout. As you can see, the building is located more centrally within the site, and there are 26 proposed car parking spaces, as opposed to the roughly 40 that are on site at the moment. The elevations, I will skip the 2 technical drawings and move on to the 3D elevations because I think they show a better perspective. It also shows the use of materials proposed. And the floor plans, so the church on the right-hand side and the community use on the left-hand side are already on site to some extent. The cafe to the north of the ground floor is sort of the new addition in terms of community facilities. The first floor residential plan shows the one-bed dwellings. On the second and third floors, there's been 2 dwellings removed from the right-hand side, that's on the eastern side of the building, to negate some residential amenity concerns we had in terms of overlooking on the adjacent properties, and the roof plan with the roof terrace and conservatory.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have one speaker, please. I've got Caroline Holt, please. Caroline, you've got 3 minutes, and I'll give you a 30-second warning as well. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak at this. This was my idea. I'm a member of St Andrew's Methodist Church as a steward, and I've been a resident of Liversedge for 23 years. One of the primary reasons for this was there is no community venue in the little town area for anybody to use, and that has been a real issue for local people for quite a long time. And so we decided to explore that. And subsequently, we have had luncheon clubs now with 50 people coming. We have a friendship club of 40. We have film nights that 100 people have come. But the site is not fit for purpose. It was designed to be 40 years in its building. It is now over 55 years old. And as you've seen this morning, it's a prefab. So the building has had its day. The church could not afford to actually just put a community space there, and so the flats were the only way in which we could actually be a self-sustaining project to work in partnership with the services in Kirklees. And to that end, I was a COVID support officer, and we made a vaccination centre because there was nowhere in the Spen Valley that could actually offer that facility. Social media and local people had nowhere to go. They complained about having to go to Batley and Huddersfield to have their vaccinations. Subsequent to that, 15,000 people and more came through St Andrews. I was in the car park doing carport duties, and I have to say no residents of the area complained about parking or cars. In fact, quite the opposite. They came and thanked us for actually providing the facility. The same is true of the activities we've had in the past, because all those things that I've listed to you, we never have more than 20 cars ever in the car park, because most of our users of the building either come by public transport, taxi, or share cars, or walk. So our community is actually local and they're not bussing in or coming in by car. One of the stipulations for the affordable housing is cars will not be allowed for residents, because we'll be providing 2 pool cars for them to use when they actually live there. So the recommendation there is that they won't have cars. So there will be 24 spaces available for anybody using the building. And that is obviously the main objection is through highways. So I do hope that you can support something where we want to work in partnership. Already DWP, Community Services and other agencies within Kirklees want to come and use the facility.
30 seconds, please.
And at the moment, it just isn't big enough or fit for purpose. And the new plans are going to accommodate all that usage during the week for local people. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, please. Councillor Ramsey, please.
There are lots of things that I really like about this project, and it's really interesting to hear some of the discussion around the residents. I think the thing that is most concerning is probably the parking. I love the 100% affordable housing. If parking is mitigated and genuinely, the residents are not going to have parking spots and use 2 pool cars, then that's really reassuring. If, as the speaker's already said, we've got high numbers already attending different facilities, different community facilities, then to some extent that is reassuring as well. So I take the point that parking is the key issue that we need to be looking at here, but there's lots of things that I think are recommending this.
Thank you. Councillor Pinnock, please. Sorry, Councillor, I didn't see you. Sorry.
When I was reading this last night, there were 1 or 2 things I wasn't too sure about. But having a close look at it this morning, it is one of these old prefab buildings, and they do last about 40 years, as we've found out with blocks of, well, small blocks of flats that we've got in Berwick and also bungalows. I didn't like the idea of the parking, and we saw that this morning, but it's been slightly alleviated as that with what we've been presented with. One thing that I really do think is a great idea is 100% affordable, and it's got to be said, community spaces in Spen Valley are very few and far between. In Etmond-Wyke, we've got about 2 basically that you could do a little bit of shouting about. Apart from that, nothing. So all in all, I am in favour of this, and I don't know whether anybody's moved it. If they've not moved it, I'll move it. If somebody has moved it, then I'll second it. Thank you.
Shall I second to that?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pinnock, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as I indicated earlier, I had sighted these plans some while ago, and I thought then, what a really good idea, because the existing buildings are, how can I put it, not really a good advert for what the church is trying to do. And I think that the plans we've seen today do actually show a good intent, both in terms of what is going on within the building, but also the building itself indicates the importance, if you like, of what is being done. Churches can be a problem sometimes, and that is that there are occasions when you get lots and lots of people attending for various things, and in most cases churches haven't got car parks at all, and you just have to make the best. I don't know whether this applies in the same way to mosques, but in some cases there are parking issues which raise their heads when you get a large attendance, and I just think you have to work through that somehow. But having said all of that, I think that what's being offered here is absolutely brilliant, and if we can get over the issues, the sort of basic issues relating to parking, the sort of everyday issues, not the special event type of issue, but the everyday, and I am reassured by the pool car idea. I think my colleague Councillor Lawson has been thinking about a management. A way of trying to manage that, and I will. Well, I was going to say pass it over, but when he speaks, I'll ask him to talk about that. But I support this wholeheartedly. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Lawson, then now.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with what's been said before. There's a lot to like in this in terms of affordable housing, in terms of sustainable location, etc. I was very happy to hear about the pool car situation from the speaker, and I would ask through you, Chair, whether we could formalise that a little, whether by means of a condition or a voluntary agreement. Could I ask for comment through you, Chair? Thank you.
You can. Would you like to come in on that? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, through you,
Right.
Chair. I'm not sure we'd be able to condition it as such through the normal planning conditions, but I think it may well be something we could look at through the 106, through tenancy agreements. And I think that would be the best way to do it.
Councillor Lawson?
So given that, Chair, I think if that could be included, though, I think that would give reassurance to the objectors and to possibly to highways. Who knows? Thank you.
I'm going to say watch this space. So, thank you, Councillor Lunat, please.
Thank you. As my colleagues have said, I think wholeheartedly there's a lot to like in this application. And Councillor Lawson talked about the parking management plan, and that's literally what I was going to say. And if we could try to see if it is a condition that we could put on, and that would be really good, in which you alluded to say yes. Earlier on, you mentioned just about the drainage, as it was assumed. Can we just make sure that it's not just assumed and we know where we're going with it, kind of thing? But just that, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to you, Chair. Yeah, at this stage, we are recommending pre-commencement conditions for full details of the drainage, surface and foul water drainage. So there'd be no spade in the ground before that was in place. I think, given what's already on site and given how the site's already used, it would make sense for that to happen. But we'd obviously consult with the relevant statutory consultees as well to make sure that whatever is presented is acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Luke, did you indicate? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm fairly new to these plans, unlike some members, but obviously the first thing that stuck out at me was car parking, and thinking, well, if these are used by residents, then there isn't actually going to be any parking for the community uses. But I'm pleased to hear about this sort of innovative proposals in that regard, so that residents won't need to actually own their own cars, which actually solves a bit of a wider issue in many ways, rather than just the specific issues to this site. If more of that can be done elsewhere, so much the better. Obviously, the site itself is next to quite a high-frequency bus route, and I can imagine residents finding it very convenient to use that to access local facilities in Hetman, White, Cleckheaton, or going further afield to Bradford, Dewsbury, Wakefield, if necessary. And it's got a lot to offer, as other residents have said. It's quite unusual to get an officer report that says, actually, this isn't a strictly policy compliant proposal, but on balance, the benefits outweigh those drawbacks. And I think, like others here, I'm inclined to agree and to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. And regarding buses, there's also the access bus that people will be able to use to get to local supermarkets. Councillor Gregg, please.
Thank you, Chair. Like a lot of the members, I also support the application. It's really good to see affordable properties for elderly people being made available. One of the points I wanted to just draw members' attention to, and to request that if it was to go to be approved, and I think it already is going to be in the conditions, but just for clarity, that the noise, the materials used to mitigate noise between the community hall and the cafe, I know a lot of the time it's been suggested that residents are going to be attending community events, so they may be attending them, but in order to get as wide a community usage out of the building as possible, there may be events taking place downstairs that residents above aren't attending. And with it being a church, there may be singing, there may be music. To mitigate the noise between those communal areas and the flats above, is there going to be materials sufficient to stop noise, and also to just so that obviously it will allow the community facilities to have as wide a range of use as possible, and to stop any noise pollution for residents above? Can that be put as a condition, so those are really good materials that are used? I think it is at number 4, but I just wanted to check. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. I think the detailed condition for noise impact assessment has been set out by colleagues in environmental health, and all the party wall, all the party ceiling considerations are in there. So there's relevant British standards that they'll have to meet, as well as the party wall sort of considerations. So yeah, that will be fully considered under a noise impact assessment and mitigation if needed.
Thank you. Can I just support what's been said this afternoon about this plan application? When I first read it, I thought, wow, what a lovely, lovely idea. So for your first baby, may you have many more babies, because I think this is absolutely lovely. So, so I have got a proposer, Councillor Hall, and second at Councillor Ramsey for approval. Everybody happy to move to the vote, please? Councillor, yeah.
Just like to say, before we go to the vote, I think it's a bit of a sad day, though, when none of the 3 ward councillors have bothered putting pen to paper to say what a good scheme it is for this area. I think if it were in Hetman, all 3 of us would have put our support in.
They have done in the
Yeah, in the report, it does say Councillor Hall and Councillor support the application. There were no comments from Melanie Stephen. Melanie's a committee member, but she's poorly, so couldn't attend this afternoon. So, okay. Okay, to move to the vote then, people. Thank you.
Okay, to vote on the officer's recommendation to approve. Councillor Hall. Councillor Ramsey.
4.
Councillor Pervez.
4.
Councillor Dadd.
4.
Councillor Anwar.
4.
Councillor Lunat.
4.
Councillor Gregg.
4.
Councillor Lukic.
4.
Councillor Pinnock.
4.
Councillor Lawson.
4.
Councillor Lowe.
4.
So that's carried. Thank you.
Members, thank you very, very much for your contributions this afternoon at the Planning Committee meeting. Thank you to everybody from the planning officers. You do a fantastic job. We really do appreciate you. Thank you to the IT team. Thank you so much. Please may I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a safe and happy New Year. I will now close the meeting. Thank you.